Have you ever been told your empathy is a gift, yet somehow it keeps breaking you? You feel everything. You're always available. You always know how to say the right thing. But late at night, when no one's watching, you wonder, why do I feel so empty if this is supposed to be my gift? We live in a world that praises the empath, the giver, the feeler, the one who always understands. And if you're one of them, you've likely been told since childhood, you're so sensitive. That's your gift. Your teachers noticed how you always knew when someone was sad. Your friends came to you with their secrets, their heartbreaks, their deepest fears. Your family leaned on you to be the peacekeeper, the translator of emotions, the one who could sense the storm before it hit. But what if I told you that this very gift may be the camouflage of your oldest wound? That your ability to sense others isn't just kindness, but a survival strategy your inner child never outgrew? Think about it. When did you first learn that your feelings were too much? When did you discover that tuning into others kept you safer than expressing yourself? When did you realize that being needed felt more secure than being wanted? In Jungian terms, this is what we call a persona built on pain, a role so convincing that even you start to believe it's who you are. The mask becomes the face. The survival skill becomes the identity. The wound becomes the gift. But beneath this beautiful, exhausting performance lives someone who's been waiting their entire life to be seen for who they are, not just what they give. Today, we're going to unravel this together. Not to shame your empathy, but to free it from the prison of your past. Not to take away your sensitivity, but to give you back yourself. Because what I'm about to share with you will change everything you thought you knew about being an empath. And it starts with a question that might break your heart open. What if the very thing that makes you feel special is the same thing that's been keeping you from feeling whole? Let's go back to the room where no one noticed your silence. Back to the dinner table where your needs were always too much. Back to the nights when you stayed quiet so others wouldn't fall apart. Back to the moment when a small child, you learned that love had conditions. You didn't become an empath because it was sacred. You became one because being invisible felt safer than being rejected. Picture this. You're 7 years old. Your mother is crying again. Your father is angry again. The air in your house feels thick with unspoken words, with emotions too big for anyone to name. And somehow, in your small body, you make a decision that will shape the next 25 years of your life. If I can just make them feel better, maybe they'll love me the way I need them to. So you learned. You learned to read every micro-expression, every sigh, every shift in energy that meant danger was coming, every subtle change in your mother's voice that meant she was about to break, every tightening in your father's jaw that meant the explosion was near. You became a tiny emotional detective, scanning for clues about how to survive another day in a house where feelings were weapons and yours were always too much. You became hyper-attuned, hyper-available, hyper-responsible. Because if someone else was okay, then maybe you wouldn't be hurt. Maybe you'd be needed. Maybe you'd finally be kept. And so began your education in the art of becoming smaller so others could be bigger. You learned that your sadness made your mother more sad, so you swallowed it. You learned that your anger scared your father, so you buried it. You learned that your joy was too much when others were struggling, so you dimmed it. You learned that your needs were a burden, so you stopped having them. Instead, you became an expert at reading the room and knowing what everyone needed before they knew it themselves, at being the safe place where others could fall apart while you held it all together. The adults around you praise this. You're so mature for your age. You're such a good listener. You always know just what to say. But nobody asked, what is this costing her? What is she giving up to give us this comfort? Where does she go to fall apart when everyone else is done falling apart on her? And so empathy, the act of absorbing others, became your currency for love, your ticket to belonging, your proof of worth, your insurance policy against abandonment. The world praised you for it. You're so kind. You always know what I'm feeling. You're a gift to everyone around you. But no one asked what it was costing you, because this gift came with a shadow price. You learned to disappear so others could exist. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in adulthood. You walk into a coffee shop, and before you even order, you're scanning. Who's the barista having a bad day? Who's the customer looking lonely at the corner table? Who needs your attention, your energy, your care? You go to a party, and instead of enjoying yourself, you become the unofficial therapist. People gravitate toward you with their problems, their drama, their pain. And you absorb it all, calling it connection. You start dating someone, and within weeks, you know their childhood trauma, their deepest fears, their family dysfunction. But they know almost nothing real about you, because you've become so good at being a mirror that you've forgotten you have your own face. Take a moment and feel this with me. How many times have you walked into a room and immediately started scanning? Not for beauty, not for joy, but for who needs you. Who's upset? Who's struggling? Who you can fix? You call it intuition, but Jung would call it hypervigilance dressed as love. Here's what most people don't understand about empaths. They don't feel loved. They feel used, confused, and terrified of being alone. They walk into rooms scanning for danger, calling it intuition. They care so much they forget who they are when no one needs them. They burn out, then apologize for burning. They give until they're empty, then feel guilty for having nothing left. And still, they call it love. Let me tell you about Emma. She's 32, works in social services, and everyone calls her the office therapist. People seek her out for advice, for comfort, for that magical ability she has to make them feel heard. Emma's phone buzzes at all hours with friends in crisis. Her lunch breaks are spent listening to coworkers' relationship problems. Her weekends disappear into other people's emergencies. She hasn't read a book for pleasure in months because she's too busy researching solutions for other people's problems. But here's what nobody sees. Emma has been living on 3 hours of sleep because she spent the night texting her friend through another breakup. The same friend who doesn't text back when Emma shares something vulnerable. She hasn't been to therapy herself in months because everyone else needs it more. She's dating someone who never asks how she's doing, but loves how well she listens to his problems. Emma is drowning in purpose, suffocating in service, and she started to wonder why the thing everyone says makes her special, makes her feel so alone. Emma came home last Tuesday night, collapsed on her couch, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not for anyone else's pain, but for her own, for the exhaustion she'd been carrying, for the emptiness that lived where her own needs used to be, for the growing realization that she had no idea who she was when nobody needed her. She looked around her apartment, filled with thank you cards from people she'd helped, photos of friends she'd supported through crises, books on psychology and healing that she'd bought to better serve others. But nowhere in that space could she find a trace of Emma's own dreams, Emma's own interests, Emma's own voice. That night, she asked herself a question that terrified her. If I stopped being helpful tomorrow, would anyone still want to spend time with me? The silence that followed was deafening. This is the moment when the empathy mask begins to crack, when the performance becomes too exhausting to maintain, when the wound that's been masquerading as a gift finally demands to be seen. If this feels familiar, pause with me here. Take a breath. Feel the weight of recognition in your chest. What if your empathy isn't your gift, but your guard? What if your ability to feel others so deeply isn't because you're more evolved, but because you learned early that your survival depended on it? What if the very thing that makes you feel special is the same thing that makes you feel invisible? This is the paradox Jung spoke about when he discussed the persona. The mask we wear becomes so convincing that we forget there's a face underneath. You spent so long being the empath that you've forgotten how to be you, the you who has needs, the you who gets angry, the you who doesn't always understand, the you who sometimes can't fix it, the you who deserves to take up space just for existing, not for serving. Here lies the brutal truth that will shatter everything you thought you knew about yourself. The empath's deepest wound is not feeling too much. It's mistaking enmeshment for love. It's calling your trauma a gift, because that's how you learn to survive it. It's holding space for everyone, but having none left for yourself. It's confusing absorption with connection and suffering with compassion. This is what Jung called the shadow wearing the mask of virtue. Your shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, hidden away, has been masquerading as your greatest strength. And the world has been applauding the performance. You want to know what nobody tells empaths? That their greatest fear isn't being alone, it's being ordinary. Because if you're not the one who feels everything, who fixes everything, who carries everything, then who are you? If you're not indispensable, are you valuable? If you're not needed, are you lovable? If you're not the emotional support system, do you have any other identity? These are the questions that haunt the empath's shadow. The part of you that's terrified that without your pain, without your service, without your endless availability, you're nothing special at all. You've built your entire sense of self around being different, being deeper, being more sensitive, being the one who gets it when others don't. But what if I told you that this specialness is actually a prison? That this identity is actually a cage you built to protect yourself from the terror of being rejected for who you really are? And here's the paradox that will break your heart open. The more people admire you, the less you feel seen. The more you care for others, the less you belong to yourself. The more you give, the more empty you become. The more needed you are, the more alone you feel. You spend your life being the safe place for everyone else, but no one knows that you cry alone because you've never truly felt safe being you. You've become the lighthouse for others while forgetting that lighthouses don't get to sail the seas they guide others through. You've turned your sensitivity into a brand. You've romanticized your burnout as purpose. You've made your wound holy, so you wouldn't have to feel the grief of never being chosen for who you are beyond what you give. Let me share another story. This is about David, a 34-year-old therapist who's been in his field for 8 years. Everyone calls him gifted. His clients adore him. His colleagues respect him. He's built his entire identity around being the one who gets it. David can tell you exactly what's happening in someone's nervous system within minutes of meeting them. He can sense trauma in the way someone holds their shoulders. He can feel depression in the quality of someone's silence. His intuition is uncanny, his compassion boundless, his dedication complete. But David hasn't had a meaningful relationship in 3 years. Not because he can't find anyone, but because he's so used to being in helper mode that he doesn't know how to just be with someone. Without a problem to solve, without a pain to heal. Last month, David went on a date with someone who didn't need him, who didn't share their trauma within the first hour, who didn't look to him for answers or healing or deep psychological insights. Someone who just wanted to laugh and talk about movies and share stories about their childhood dog. And David felt empty, useless, boring, because he'd spent so long defining himself by his ability to fix others that he forgot he was whole without their brokenness. He drove home that night and sat in his car for an hour, crying. Not because the date went badly, but because it went well, and he had no idea how to be in a connection that didn't center around someone else's pain. The next morning, David looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Someone who had built an entire life around healing others while remaining completely unknown to himself. He realized he hadn't felt genuinely curious about another person in years, only diagnostically interested. He hadn't shared a real struggle with anyone because he was supposed to be the one with answers. David's revelation was profound and terrifying. He had become so skilled at being what others needed that he had forgotten how to want anything for himself. His empathy had become a prison of his own making, where the key was always in someone else's hand. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the shadow wearing the mask of virtue. David's gift had become his curse. His strength had become his weakness. His light had become his darkness. Here's what your shadow is whispering in the dark, the truths you're terrified to acknowledge. What if I stop caring so much and nobody needs me anymore? What if I set boundaries and people leave? What if I'm not special without my pain? What if I'm not lovable without my service? What if there's nothing interesting about me beyond my ability to heal others? What if I'm just as ordinary and flawed as everyone else? These are not shameful thoughts. They're human ones. And they're exactly what Jung meant when he said we must integrate our shadow, not to get rid of it, but to understand what it's been protecting us from. Your empathy became your armor. Your sensitivity became your shield. Your exhaustion became your proof of worth. But armor, no matter how beautiful, was never meant to be worn forever. This is the moment Jung called the dark night of the soul, when the thing you thought was saving you is revealed to be the thing that's been slowly killing you. When you realize that your gift is actually your trauma response. When you see that your specialness is actually your survival strategy. When you understand that your empathy is actually your emergency alert system that never learned to turn off. This recognition doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. It doesn't make your empathy fake. It makes it complex. It doesn't make your caring wrong. It makes it unconscious. And now, for the first time, you have a choice. So, where do we go from here? How do you unravel a lifetime of conditioning? How do you separate your true empathy from your trauma response? How do you keep your heart open without losing your soul? First, we stop calling it a gift. Not because your empathy is bad, but because calling it holy without context only keeps you stuck in a loop. Your empathy is not your gift. Your wholeness is. Your sensitivity is not your superpower. Your authenticity is. Your ability to feel others is beautiful, but your ability to feel yourself is sacred. This is where Jung's concept of individuation becomes not just philosophical, but practical. Individuation is the process of becoming who you really are, stripped of all the roles and masks and survival strategies you've accumulated. It's the courage to disappoint people in service of your truth. It's the radical act of taking up space as yourself. You are not here to disappear beautifully. You're here to feel, yes, but also to feel yourself. You're not selfish for having boundaries. You're not cold for not wanting to carry everyone's pain. You're not broken for wanting to be seen, not just useful. When you reclaim your space, your voice, your truth, the gift doesn't disappear. It evolves. Empathy without self becomes martyrdom. Empathy with self becomes medicine. Let me show you what this looks like. Instead of absorbing your friend's anxiety, you learn to witness it with compassion while keeping your own nervous system regulated. Instead of fixing your partner's problems, you learn to hold space for their journey while honoring your own. Instead of being available to everyone all the time, you learn to be present when you choose to be from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Instead of reading every room for danger, you learn to read rooms for beauty, for connection, for joy. True empathy, the kind Jung would recognize, is not absorption. It's presence. It's not taking on someone's pain. It's witnessing it. It's not fixing someone's problem. It's honoring their journey. It's not disappearing into their experience. It's showing up as yourself. This means learning to say, I feel you, but I am not you. I see your pain, but I don't have to wear it. I can love you without losing me. I can care deeply without drowning in that care. I can be here for you while still being here for myself. These phrases might feel foreign on your tongue. They might feel selfish. They might feel wrong. That's your wound talking. That's the part of you that learned that love meant disappearing. But love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to show up. What does this look like practically? It means you can sit with someone's sadness without making it yours. It means you can offer support without offering your soul. It means you can care deeply without drowning in that care. It means you can be sensitive without being a sponge. It means you can feel everything and still belong to yourself. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, not who you think you need to be to survive. An individuated empath doesn't lose their empathy. They gain their self. They don't become cold. They become boundaried. They don't stop caring. They start caring from choice rather than compulsion. They don't become selfish. They become sustainable. This integration isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's catching yourself mid-absorption and asking, whose feeling is this? It's noticing when you're scanning for danger and choosing to scan for beauty instead. It's feeling the urge to fix someone and choosing to trust their capacity instead. It's recognizing when you're performing empathy and choosing to offer presence instead. It's learning to say no without a 3-paragraph explanation. It's learning to say yes from desire, not obligation. It's learning to feel your own feelings before you feel everyone else's. It's sitting in the discomfort of not knowing how someone else is doing without immediately reaching out to check. It's allowing others to struggle without rushing in to save them, trusting their capacity for growth. It's recognizing that your constant availability might actually be enabling others' emotional dependency. It's understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone feel their own feelings without interference. It's learning that you can witness someone's pain without wearing it, hold space for someone's journey without directing it, love someone's soul without managing their experience. This is the difference between empathy and enmeshment, between compassion and codependence, between love and addiction to being needed. As we move toward integration, I invite you to sit with these questions, not as problems to solve, but as doorways to walk through. What part of yourself have you silenced just to feel loved? When was the last time you felt seen for who you are, not what you give? What would change if you believed you were valuable just for existing? What would you do if you knew you didn't have to earn love through service? Who would you be if you weren't responsible for everyone else's feelings? What does your soul want that has nothing to do with helping others? These aren't questions to answer with your mind. They're invitations for your heart. Write them down. Sit with them. Let them disturb you. Let them crack you open. Because in the cracks, that's where the light gets in. And here's another question to live with. What would you create? What would you explore? What would you become if you weren't constantly managing everyone else's emotional weather? Feel that question in your body. Notice what wants to emerge when you're not performing emotional labor. Notice what dreams have been waiting in the wings of your endless availability to others. This is where your authentic power lives. Not in your ability to absorb pain, but in your capacity to create beauty. Not in your talent for disappearing, but in your courage to emerge. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The unconscious belief that you must disappear to be loved is not fate. It's a wound, and now it's time to meet it, not with shame, but with reverence. Because within that wound is your truest voice, the one you silenced to be needed, the one who's been waiting patiently for you to come home. This homecoming isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 small choices. The choice to feel your own feelings first. The choice to speak your truth even when it disappoints others. The choice to rest without earning it. The choice to take up space without justifying it. The choice to love without losing yourself. And when you finally turn inward, not to perform, not to give, not to prove, but to simply be, that's when the dream changes. That's when the well you thought had dried up becomes a river. That's when your empathy stops being your burden and becomes your birthright. That's when you realize that the most radical thing you can do is take up space as yourself. There's a moment. It happens differently for everyone. When you stop apologizing for existing. When you stop performing your worth. When you stop earning your right to be here. And in that moment, something shifts. The people who were attracted to your woundedness, they fade away. But the people who see your wholeness, they show up. The relationships built on need, they transform or end. But the connections built on choice, they deepen. The love that required your disappearance, it reveals itself as something else. But the love that celebrates your presence, it becomes everything. You see, your real gift was never your ability to disappear into others. Your real gift is your ability to be fully, magnificently, unapologetically you, and still have room in your heart for the world. Your real gift is showing others that they can feel deeply without drowning, that they can care without disappearing, that they can love without losing themselves. Your real gift is your wholeness, not your wounds. Your real gift is your presence, not your performance. Your real gift is your truth, not your service. When you show up as yourself, messy, imperfect, gloriously human, you give others permission to do the same. When you love yourself enough to have boundaries, you teach others what healthy love looks like. When you choose to stay in your own body instead of living in everyone else's pain, you model what emotional sovereignty looks like. This is the true gift of the integrated empath, not to be the wounded healer, but to be the whole human who happens to feel deeply. Not every gift is holy. Some are survival. But now you don't have to survive by giving yourself away. You can love and stay whole. You can feel and remain rooted. You can be soft and still belong to yourself. You can care deeply and still have energy for your own life. You can be sensitive, without being a sanctuary for everyone else's pain. And that, dear empath, is your real gift. The world doesn't need another person who disappears beautifully. It needs someone who shows up fully. It needs your presence, not your performance. It needs your truth, not your service. It needs you, the real you, exactly as you are. Not the you who fixes everything. Not the you who feels everything. Not the you who gives everything. Just you, whole, present, belonging to yourself. Welcome home. This isn't the end of your empathy. It's the beginning of your sovereignty. This isn't the death of your sensitivity. It's the birth of your boundaries. This isn't the loss of your gift. It's the reclaiming of yourself. And from this place of wholeness, of presence, of choice, your empathy becomes something different, something clean, something sustainable, something that serves the world without sacrificing your soul, something that heals others without harming yourself, something that connects without consuming. This is the empathy the world has been waiting for. Not the empathy born from trauma, but the empathy born from love. Love for yourself, love for the truth, love for the messy, beautiful, imperfect reality of being human. If this resonated with you, take a moment to breathe with it. Feel the recognition, feel the grief, feel the hope. And if you're ready to explore more about Jung's path to wholeness, about reclaiming your authentic self, about healing the wound that masquerades as a gift, you know where to find me. The journey home to yourself is the most important journey you'll ever take. And you don't have to walk it alone. There will be moments when you doubt this path, when the old patterns call you back, when someone accuses you of being selfish for having boundaries, when the world tries to convince you that your worth lies in your service. Remember this: you're not responsible for other people's feelings. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are not here to be the emotional shock absorber for a world that hasn't learned to process its own pain. You are here to love, to feel, to create, to experience the full spectrum of being human, not just the parts that serve others. Your empathy is not your burden to bear. It's your gift to share when you choose, how you choose, from a place of wholeness rather than woundedness. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust that you can be sensitive and sovereign, empathic and boundaried, loving and whole. The world is waiting for the real you, not the performance, not the mask. You.